So, if you guys were missing a Sherlock Holmes series as much as we were, then CBS heard our prayers and gave us what looks to be a somewhat promising new take on Arthur Conan Doyle's greatest creation. Watson sees the titular character in the driving seat, only he's a geneticist from Pittsburgh and he's running a diagnostic team like a group of detectives. The house ripoff accusations might have been real if they didn't include that ending, but because they did, Randall Park is now one of the most compelling men on television. Again, in case you haven't seen the show, spoiler alert, because we're talking about the ending of the first episode of Watson and what we can expect from the next one. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
No, don't tell me. I take my own histories. It's the only way to avoid anchor bias and stuff.
Lying is everything. Watson's great first solve. Usually, a TV show will take a couple episodes to set things up before getting its main storyline going, but Watson dives right in. Episode 1 opens with the infamous Reichenbach Falls scene where Sherlock Holmes and Professor Moriarty have their final showdown. It's an extended sequence focusing on Watson's perspective, so we don't really get to see who shoots who and who survives in the first few minutes. We just see Watson, a medical professional, diving into a running stream that opens up into a waterfall, with several rocks just jutting out of the bed. We guess logic does take a backseat when you're trying to save someone you love, and from the looks of things, Watson loved Holmes. That's why once he recovered from his traumatic brain injuries, he got back into the world by becoming the head of the Holmes Clinic, dedicated to diagnosing some of the most intriguing and complex medical cases in the United States. Watson has 4 members in his team, much like Dr. Gregory House did, but House never had twins. Watson does. So, point Team Morris, I guess? The twins are Stephens and Adam Croft, your typical case of opposites coming out of the same womb. Stephens is the quiet introvert, while Adam is Mr. Steal Your Girl, and oops, he also stole his brother's girl, which is a prick move if you ask us, but we're sure we'll learn why that happened later on in the series. Sibling rivalry isn't the only thing that makes Watson's team diverse. We have English Lingman Sasha Lubbock, a specialist in rheumatology and immunology, who was born in China but has been brought up in Dallas, Texas. So she has a Texas-sized chip on her shoulder. She asks Watson if he's going to discriminate against her because of her accent, because, you know, that's a real thing in America. But he assures her that that won't be a thing. Rounding out the team is Dr. Ingrid Darien, who is a top-notch neurologist and also Watson's neurologist. At the beginning of the episode, she takes stock of his current medical condition, because it's only been 6 months since he had a ketchup leak in his brain bottle and he was already rushing to work. Ingrid is also the residential enigma of the series because she does what Watson encourages all his residents to do in the episode: lie. When she finds out that Watson has been hiding his paroxysmal sympathetic hyperactivity from her, which is a dangerous side effect to his injuries and will only get worse, she fires him as her patient and asks her why he hired her. Watson tells her that despite her credentials, which were immaculate, she felt the need to lie on her resume and make it look even better. He knew that she would be a go-getter back then, and he was right. In a way, the patient that they started treating in this episode, Erica, starts getting hallucinations in the middle of an ultrasound scan. She's 23 weeks pregnant, and when the face of the nurse doing her scan starts melting, Erica runs out of the nursing home and gets hit by a car. Turns out, she wasn't sleeping for a week straight, and is convinced she suffers from familial fatal insomnia, a degenerative neurological disorder which can be really a pain to go through, both physically and psychologically. Erica's evidence is the fact that her father claimed to have been diagnosed with FFI, which led to him concluding suicide. Her grandfather was an alleged patient as well, so it seems to run in the family, and she's concerned she will pass this down to her baby. Erica is ready to have a risky premature birth procedure and get an even riskier bone transplant because she knows she has fatal familial insomnia, but of course, it turns out that that's not the case. Erica's symptoms start showing up in the cousin that she lives with, and Watson believes it was songbird fever at first because the circumstances match the symptoms. But turns out, only Erica's cousin has the condition. Erica herself is suffering from biotinidase deficiency, which is a hereditary ailment. She inherited it from her father, who turns out is also her cousin's father, and Watson made the connection by analyzing the bridge of their eyes and their webbed toes. Syndactyly is a condition that is entirely genetic, so the the only way that Erica and her cousin could share it is if they had the same parent, which they did. Turns out, Erica's dad lied to the whole family about her cousin being her half-sister. And that wasn't the only lie that shaped this episode. The entire point of the pilot was to demonstrate that lies can lead to the truth and, sometimes might be better than the truth. Based on the patient's family history and the susceptibility rate for the familial fatal insomnia, Watson took a guess that Erica's insomnia wasn't being caused by the syndrome. It was a result of anxiety. Her father was one of 5 possible inheritors of the FFI gene, but if he got it, then at least one of his brothers should have gotten it as well, seeing as there's a 50% chance of transmission. So, to confirm his diagnosis, he lied to Erica and told her they'd found a secret way to treat FFI, which finally made her go to sleep. It made the patient feel better and allowed Watson to rule out one deceased from the overall diagnosis. But the show also took the entire premise of the House-Cuddy rivalry and boiled it down into one episode. Erica's case was brought to Watson by his ex-wife, Mary, who split with him because he disappeared on her to go solve puzzles with Sherlock Holmes. When he came back, he was near death, and Mary just couldn't take it. But she knew John was an excellent doctor, so she sent him Erica's case. And though he lied to the patient about the FFI treatment, she accepted it a lot faster than Cuddy does, at least on the outside. By the end of the episode, she basically enables Watson to continue lying if that's what he needs to make the right call, because his time with Sherlock had made him a better doctor somehow, and that kind of feels like the crux of the show. At the end of the episode, we find out that Watson is getting Shinwell to bring him some pills so he can experimentally enhance his recovery. But in doing this, he's becoming the addict that Sherlock Holmes is in Doyle's original work. However, what differentiates Morris's Watson from Holmes and House is the fact that he's doing all this while suffering from a severe brain injury. As bad as House's drug addiction was, he didn't have a problem in his brain, and the closest he got to developing one was when he got on methadone. Sherlock, too, didn't exactly have the kind of leaking blood, like a burst bottle injuries to his head, that Watson starts this series with. He's already suffering the side effects, getting dizzying headaches in the middle of a rap sesh, and that never ends well for anyone. Though they were able to save the patient this time around, Watson himself is a ticking time bomb because he can't remember how he survived Reichenbach, and he can't get over Holmes' death. He doesn't say it, but when he unearths the case book that he was compiling during the time with Sherlock, he gets this look in his eye that says, "I know what I have to do now." Watson had been looking for meaning this entire episode, and it looks like solving medical puzzles while answering the puzzle of his own survival is just the beginning. Series creator Craig Sweeney has sworn that he will only bring Holmes back as a rare supporting character, if at all. But for the most part, he'll keep him dead. Figuring out the mystery of Reichenbach isn't just about getting closure over his friend's death, though. Watson also needs to know why he saw Moriarty's hand dangling over his head. Well, he definitely needs to know that. We knew the moment Shinwell claimed 3 men went in and 1 came out that he was lying, and turns out he really was. As for the why and who, well, Shinwell the traitor and Moriarty's evil plan. Biogenetic terrorism plot. Shinwell Johnson is the definition of a side character in the Sherlock universe. A criminal who works with him on the ground, whose testimony won't be admissible in a court of law due to his status. But his word is as reliable as a concrete in matters of espionage. Shinwell was one of Doyle's better minor characters. The Elementary series made him more of a tragic one because there he got into the informant game and got in over his head. Shinwell's war with the South Bronx killers showed you just how dangerous not listening to the man who's trying to teach you the ropes can get, which is why it's interesting that Sweeney has decided to make him a main character, and not just that, but a rat as well. Throughout the episode, he basically serves as Watson's Alfred, looking after his new crop of doctors, driving him around in a car with a number of Sherlock's home on Baker Street as a nod to his friend. He brings Watson a risky batch of medicines under his own name, and says that Sherlock has appointed him as his aide. But you can see Watson is shocked that Holmes would name a man like Shinwell in his will. John is still reeling from the bonk he suffered to the head, so it will probably take him a while to figure this out. But at the end of episode 1, we learn that Shinwell is in league with none other than Professor Moriarty, who has enlisted him to steal a bunch of genetic samples from Watson's lab. Randall Park's opening monologue threw us off because we couldn't see his face, and placing his voice was sort of unrealistic. I mean, the last person you would expect to play a character like Moriarty is a comedy man like Park. But if Andrew Scott could pull it off, well, we have faith in Randall as well. And to be fair, the limited amount of screen time he had in this episode was also the highlight of the episode. So, we better pay attention. In this series, Moriarty is an American who is using a security company called Always Everywhere to spy, presumably on the world. This organization is also the front for his criminal cabal, and it looks like Moriarty has some rather damning dirt on Shinwell. Otherwise, he wouldn't be selling out Watson so easily. The way things stand right now, it's quite possible that the Holmes clinic isn't even created by Sherlock's will, and it's just another ploy by Moriarty to further his goals for world domination. But world domination is apparently not his intention. In an interview promoting the series, Sweeney mentioned that Park's Moriarty isn't exactly a big picture kind of guy. That, to us, means he's more like the Joker, which means he's far more troubling. I mean, we all know what happens when Joker acquires dangerous samples of bacteria, viruses, laughing gases, and such. And the way Watson has set things up, it looks like their Joker will be using genetics as a weapon. The two things that allowed John to make a correct diagnosis for Erica and her cousin were genetic markers that couldn't have been influenced by external factors. Hell, Erica's disease was basically a genetic disease, and Watson combined his knowledge as a doctor with his detective observational skills to conclude she just needed biotin to get better. We suspect he'll be applying this kind of logic to every patient he sees next, including himself and the Reichenbach Falls incident. John's memory not returning is crucial to Shinwell's deception staying intact, because the truth is, it was most likely Moriarty who pulled him out of the water. There would be no other reason for him to remember his hand floating over him, because if James died, he'd have sunk to the bottom. We think that Park Moriarty's an antichrist who wants to create a genetic weapon that can cause wide-scale, permanent damage to human society, and John is, ironically enough, the only man who can catch on to this. To make sure he doesn't, he's having Shinwell change the drugs he's using to self-medicate so he can send himself into an early grave instead, because above all, Moriarty needs time. So we suspect that each future episode of Watson will see John treat a new patient, but also himself and the larger cancer that is Moriarty's cabal. He has to realize at some point that his meds are being switched out, and when he does, boy oh boy is Shinwell in for a world of hurt. If he doesn't, Ingrid definitely will. And she's another curiosity, because in the weeks ahead trailer for the show, Moriarty actually approaches her. She has a past that hasn't been explained, but has been alluded to being related to Sherlock and Watson's previous exploits in some manner. Many fans think she's actually Sherlock's daughter with Irene Adler, but we'd put our money on her being Adler instead. Watson has already pointed out her propensity to lie, and we know he can put on a blindfold in front of someone he thinks is helping him overall. So this is the overall picture. John Watson's life-saving genetic research is being stolen by Shinwell Johnson and pilfered off to James Moriarty because, reasons. We think it's possible that Shinwell somehow ended up getting Sherlock killed, which is why he's working with Moriarty. He seems to genuinely love and care for John, so his treason isn't motivated by something so weak as monetary gain. It's rooted in something deep, like family being held hostage or immense guilt over getting someone killed. That would explain why he seems to detest Moriarty, but why he doesn't really do anything to stop him. Jim must have dirt on Shinwell, proving his role in Sherlock's downfall, and that will ruin his life more than his career. As for James, if he is an antichrist, he will be working towards dispensing his genetic weapon through some kind of airborne delivery system, seeing as that would be the fastest way to spread it. Wouldn't it be funny if Always Everywhere turned out to be a company that makes drones or spyware? Either way, it'll be down to Watson's team of misfits to save his life when he isn't saving his patients, and personally, we can't wait for them to get a bit more character depth. Episode 1 felt kind of rushed because Craig Sweeney tried to set up too many things at the same time. This could be because TV shows just get shorter run orders these days, and you might have like 8 to 10 episodes at best to tell a cohesive story. That's why some of the moments of the pilot also feels kind of forced and, corny. Like Watson's eureka moment, or the fact that his ex just calls him a brilliant doctor at the end of the episode, despite clearly clearly not agreeing with his unethical treatment methods. Watson's first episode felt a little inconsistent overall, but Randall Park's appearance is why we will keep going back to this series and cover it for you guys. In the coming weeks, expect tons of Sherlock Holmes content to hit your screens, and having said that, marvelous verdict. We would love to see how Chase, Taub, 13, and Cameron work with Foreman in the future, but for now, let us know what you guys think about the show and your predictions down in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more Sherlock and Watson content, and we will see you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe and don't dive down a waterfall like you're made out of iron, eh?